Hello everyone. Hope you're doing well and are safe. My name is Maham Khalid and I'll be your faculty for Unit 6, that is Liberal Perspective on Development. Now, before we start with this unit, let's first understand that what does the term liberal or liberalism means. So basically, liberalism is a political and economic philosophy that supports individual rights, private property. Liberals also support economic and political freedom, freedom of speech, and the rule of law. Okay, so basically, liberals they define development as a more equal distribution of wealth and material property. Moving forward to the learning objectives that we are going to explore in this unit is that we'll understand the concept of liberalization, like what is the policy, what are the ideals, and what are the concepts that flows under this term of liberalization. Then we will talk about the preconditions for the rise of the liberal state. And then lastly, we'll critically discuss the liberal perspective and we'll also discuss the concept of neoliberalism. Moving on, liberalism as an ideology. Now, just like I told you in the introduction about the term liberalism, and the term itself also highlights that it stands in opposition to the socialist ideals. Okay, so basically, it talks about the free and fair competition in society, it talks about freedom, it talks about that how people can act as autonomous individuals, how people are not subordinated in any field, be it social, economic, religious, or political power, right? So, as a political ideology, liberalism stands for a social and political atmosphere in which the authoritarian demands they are resisted and where the fundamental rights, where freedom of speech, expression, there is this rule of law, okay, and fundamental rights are given extreme priority. Moving forward to our next slide, that is the streams of liberal thought. Now, there are certain sects of liberal theorists, right? So, there are certain liberals who put emphasis on the economic freedom and they allow greater intervention of the nation state or of the administration or of the government in moral life. Okay, whereas there are certain sect of liberals who believe that there should be a minimum intervention of state in all walks of life. Okay, so the people who believe that there should be less intervention from the state, they are often known as libertarianism. Similarly, in the political domains, there are certain liberals who believe that personal freedom is the primary goal of the public policy and of the personal policy. Okay, whereas there are certain liberals who always believe that doing away with the political and economic constraints will definitely have greater impact on the moral improvement throughout the society. However, liberalism has been allied with the progress of the capitalist world. Okay, so a classic liberal approach to human rights believe that the people should have their own control over their own lives, and they believe that these rights they should be universal and they can be exercised by an individual to pursue their own happiness. Okay, now, moving forward to our next slide, that is the evolution of the liberal state. Okay, now a liberal state would be such that regards individual as something moral and as a rational agent. Okay, so they say that the state's role is just to provide necessary conditions for the humans to grow and to grow in prosperity, basically. Okay, so the idea of the liberal state, it can be tracked back to the political struggles that took place in England and France with the rise and the growth of capitalism. Okay, So around this time, people had this idea of individual dignity, where people had idea about self-respect and private property. There was these concepts of power and status that were particularly emerging during this time. Okay, so with the coming of the idea of the liberal state, there were some significant changes that occurred in the political organization of the society. Okay, there were certain constitutional forms of government that were framed. There was rule of law that was framed. There were, like the governments were being constructed. The governments came into place through the idea of the consent, right? So like the people will participate in the decision making. Then there was a stress on the discourse of rights. People wanted to, like upheld the idea of human rights. There were, like rights to property, right to freedom, justice, and so on, right? So there is this very prominent liberal thinker named Adam Smith, okay, and he emphasized that there is an individual urge to maximize the economic profit. Okay, and he says that a person can make use of the available resources in order to maximize their profit and in order to enhance their living standards. Okay, so this can be basically said as an evolution of the liberal state. So basically, they want a little intervention from the state, and there were multiple steps that were taken over the time. Okay, there were certain developments that took place and that led to the creation of the idea of the liberal state. Now, hopefully, the establishment and the idea of the liberal state is clear to you guys. So, now let's move forward to the next slide, that is addressing social inequality. Now, as we all know, that social inequality is one such thing where the resources are not equally distributed, and hence it lead to the class divisions in the society. Okay. Now, liberal thinkers are from the school of thought. They think that inequality is very much inherent in society, and they say that it is socially constructed. Like it's not something that is natural, but rather it is socially constructed. Now, liberals, they say that there is a strong idea of socialist egalitarianism. Okay. And they say that, like there should be every sort of equality in the society. And they say that there can be a bit of government intervention to address issues like social and economic issues, basically, right? So they emphasize on individual rights, they stress on autonomy, they view, like common goods as to be harmonious. Okay, so what they try to highlight is that, there should be, from the government's end, there should be certain programs of social welfare, and they say that the welfare of the people is actually a form of liberty, is actually a form of, egalitarianism. It is like a form of growth. Okay, so they always try to highlight that there should be universal access to education, there should be universal suffrage movement, there should be, the state should bring about various welfare schemes. The state should bring about and launch multiple programs for the resolving the social and economic issues. Now let's move forward towards our next slide, that is the welfare state. Okay. Now, the welfare state is when the government plays a key role in protecting the economic and social well-being of its citizens. Okay. Now, the term welfare state, it originally first appeared in World War II. Okay, so basically, the first welfare state was the Imperial Germany in the year roughly, like 1870s to early 1900. Okay, so this was the time when the government of Germany tried to introduce the social security in the country. Now, as I told you, that in the welfare state, the government provides material and economic support to the individuals in need. So this can include, like support of unemployment or maternity issues, or housing, or like any paternal or maternal support or something of that sort, right? So the feasibility of the welfare state is a questionable thing, right? So it depends upon the level of benefit and the distribution of the income in society. So the welfare state, it can exist only when there is a distribution of income, when there is a certain level of benefit. Now some say that, despite the welfare state, the poverty indicators, it cannot be, like the issue of poverty, it cannot be overcome. Whereas there are certain people who believe that welfare state in a as a concept in itself is very complex, and it is extremely hard to use, and it is extremely hard to imply also. Let's move forward towards the emergence of neoliberalism. Now, neoliberalism is often considered to have originated in a Swiss resort. Okay, so like this was the time where a group of economists, historians, and different philosophers, they gathered to discuss the fate of modern liberalism. Now, neoliberalism, it is based on the idea of competition between nations, between regions, between firms and individuals. Okay, so basically, they try to highlight less economic control and less economic activity in the nation states. Then they want a reduction in the union power. They want greater flexibilities in employment. They want to increase the private sector in economy. Okay, so now, the intellectual foundations of the neoliberalism, they, like they basically want a phase of development, a new era of capitalist growth that would focus the shift from the industrialization to the greater networks of information and knowledge. Okay, so now there are multiple theorists who try to, like extend a critique of neoliberalism. So, like I was saying, that there are multiple critiques of neoliberalism. So, there is one such critique that have been highlighted by Corbyn and Shenton, and they say that neoliberalism has been accused of giving corporations too much power, and thus it has worsened the economic inequality in society. Then the Castles, he tries to highlight, that neoliberal policies, they aim to increase profit for the private companies, right? Like through industrialization, through increase in information and knowledge. So they try to reduce the social welfare programs in general. Okay, then the implementation of the neoliberal policies also, it has led to, like widespread unemployment, poverty, and like unequal income distribution in society in general. So basically this is the understanding of neoliberalism.